Hi, my name is Fabienne Cola. I'm the president and founder of the Montreal International Black Film Festival. Welcome to the 16th annual Montreal International Black Film Festival, created by the Fabienne Colas Foundation and presented by Québécois in collaboration with Desjardins. The festival runs from September 23rd until October 4th, 2020, and we have for you a festival that is 100% online, a virtual festival where you can stay home with your family and enjoy the festival in your PJs. So do not hesitate to go and check out the program on montrealblackfilm.com and grab your all access pass so you can access over 120 films from 30 countries. Thank you for supporting Black filmmakers. Thank you for amplifying Black voices. The panel today is part of our MIBFF Black Market series presented by Telefilm Canada and Quebec Council for the Arts. So enjoy the panel.
Okay, so this is so exciting. I have the honor of talking about Black Stories Matter, and today I'm joined by four wonderful women, Black women at that, of course, and we are celebrating women in media, specifically Black women in media. And joining me today is Sabine Danielle, we have Ella, we have Alicia K. Harris, and Jennifer Holness. So before we go, I have a couple of things to say about you guys here, because you guys have a pretty good repertoire. So we're going to start with Ella Cooper, the founder of Black Women Film Canada, award-winning filmmaker, impact producer, and multimedia artist of Global and Lifetime, for which you have earned 2 Canadian Screen Award nominations. So congratulations, Ella. Yes. Jennifer Holness, an award-winning writer and producer of scripted and factual films and TV. Thank you for joining us, Jennifer. And of course, I have Alicia K. Harris, an award-winning director, writer, producer, production designer. She has made it her personal mission to feature the unique stories of the underrepresented, focusing more on women, which is exactly what we're doing tonight. And Sabine Danielle, who is the Director of Programming and Acquisitions at CNV-TV, the multicultural station officially launched in May. And before her appointment, Sabine hosted and produced a TV talk show, which aired both on Bell Media and Rogers TV. So ladies, an honor, and thank you so much once again for joining us. So, Sabine, you have something to say already. Oh, we don't hear you. You have to unmute yourself.
I'm no longer at the station.
You're no longer at the station. Okay, so should we redo that intro?
Yes.
We're gonna edit.
Just gotta keep it real. Sorry.
Which station are you no longer with?
CNV-TV.
CNV-TV. So
I'm just an independent producer and TV host.
There you go. And Sabine Danielle, who is an independent TV host and producer. You're also produced a TV talk show that aired both on TV Rogers or Rogers TV, as well as Bell Media. So thank you so much, ladies, for joining us. We're going to start right off the bat now, of course, because we are four, you guys are four on the panel. We're going to try to allow everybody a little bit of time to speak. And we're going to start right away with systemic racism in Canadian media. Does it exist? And I'm going to start with you, Jennifer. And if it does exist, which we kind of all know it does, tell me your experience with it.
Well, I mean, systemic racism in the Canadian film and television industry absolutely exists. But I mean, I think there's systemic issues in all of the institutions that are part of this country. And so, I guess my experience, in some ways, I'm very lucky, and I've produced, multi-million-dollar productions, films, television series, documentaries, TV docs, and so forth. And I think how it manifests is that the opportunities that you have to really work hard to get, they take longer. that your sense of them actually has very little impact in the next project. And sometimes what it is that you're there is a sense that as Canadians, as Black Canadians, when something does happen, you have to, in many ways, be so grateful. You have to compromise in some ways what your beliefs are, what narratively, what you feel passionate about. And because, we work in an industry where none of the gatekeepers, none of the people who actually make decisions are Black
people that look like us.
Yeah, and so it's just an uphill battle on many, many fronts. So and that's been my experience. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Alicia. I'm going to go with you next. I'm watching women in the industry. Jennifer just made it very clear that it's always constantly an uphill battle for women of color. Would you agree that it's like this for women in media, specifically Black women in media?
Definitely. Yeah, I think first of all, it's very isolating when you're the only person in the room. And, I think it's like what Jennifer said, it's in many institutions, like in Canada, but also in film schools, film festivals, the networks, like it kind of goes across basically every element of film. So, for me, it started in film school where I only throughout all of my film school watched like one film by a Black filmmaker, and it was Spike Lee. Didn't have any Black professors or any like Black filmmakers come in to speak. So the school didn't really go out of their way to like introduce us to those people. And I was one of 2 Black women in the program, and somehow people still confused us. So that was where it started for me. We didn't look alike. We didn't have anything similar, but yeah, so that's where it started. And then now that I'm like, making work that is specifically about Black women and like have my films that I think are very strong, I'm noticing when I submit to festivals, even though like I think my film's amazing and I've like been on TV talking about it multiple times, been in the news, like been in the Toronto Star, all that stuff, it still seems like the people choosing, the gatekeepers of the festivals are not getting it because I'm not like getting in. And I think like I'm getting into tons of.
So I have to ask you, how do you get in? So
you have to submit. You have to submit, and then there's programmers that decide. And I'm noticing even when I started my film, which is about my latest film pick, which is about a young Black girl that wears her afro to school on picture day. When I explain it to Black women, I just kind of say that, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, we get it." But when I explain it to any non-Black person, there's the explaining. And even though I think the film does a very great job of like outlining what the film is about, which is microaggressions, racism in schools, it still feels like because that Black person is not in the room, that explaining as to why the film's an important piece is missing. And there's also what I've noticed, I'll go to that film festival that I didn't get into and I'll see like the one Black film that they've chosen, and it kind of feels like they're still putting us in like this niche of like there can only be one per program or per festival, especially with
because then it becomes about Black women. If you have 2 Black women, that's what media thinks.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where I'm finding I'm having the most trouble. Like I'll never know what the programmer's decisions were, but I know I have a great film. I won the Canadian Spirit Award this year. I know it's good. Thank you.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, but I also know, from like going to film festivals and talking to the juries, like where I actually won the award, there's a Black person on the jury that talks to me after and says, your film was amazing and I really pushed for everybody to understand why it was important. So just having a Black person in the room, I can see how I get farther. And yeah, so it's disappointing because at the end of the day, it comes down to, I feel like everybody sees white people as relatable and white stories as relatable and sees themselves in those young filmmakers, but I feel like I'm not getting the same treatment. That said, there's a lot of programmers and people who have supported my work, but I can tell that there's something missing, and I think it's the Black person in the room. And
Ella, I'm going to go off of what Alicia's saying one of the things that she mentioned was, the importance of seeing yourself, behind the scenes. We're not just talking about in front of the camera. She used the word disappointing, using some of the terms. Would you say for yourself as a Black woman that you also feel that way?
I think, well, I love your questions. They're great opening conversations. So it's just a fact, right? Like, it wouldn't even be a question, but like, we're here on a panel, like 5 strong, incredible Black women. And what are we talking about? Like, not seeing ourselves, you know what I mean? And that's even and I'm just playing devil's advocate here because I like to be a trickster, I guess, but it's just like we're talking about it. We're spending our time together talking about this, and so I think it's real, and now that that's clear, I also think it's like, okay, now there's this opportunity to really celebrate different stories. Like, when we look at even our faces, our experiences, what we represent, we're representing so many different expressions of Blackness. We have so many different things to celebrate. Live traumas, different experiences of racism, and then simultaneously, I actually, it's Jennifer who said this, and Black folks don't always have to tell stories about other Black folks.
Yes.
Like, we live in this overall human experience. That said, I think it's really important that we tell our stories. It's really important that we get ourselves out there. But it's not like, oh, we need more Black folks to just tell story about Black folks. That's a fact that needs to happen. But we also need to remember that, we've been living in this society as these outsiders. And so we have an opportunity to also lead conversations and stories where we might not be central, but we're leading a whole new perspective, like on, like whiteness and all that good stuff. So I think personally, I have a daughter, and I see that now she's coming up into a world where there's a lot more representations of her I can actually find. I still have to curate it, but it exists. But I remember growing up that just didn't exist. And that, there was this great a piece that's out there right now, really famous African-American actors just talking about like how their mothers were never represented in film. And that really hit home for me, because I was like, right, yeah, like we just take for granted, like we're talking about, I just want to get my story out there, but what about seeing our families, seeing like the people we connect with and bond with and all that stuff. And then also, I'm really interested in like my world and my friends and my chosen family, like they're coming from all different walks of life. And so how are we coming together to make that change, so that we're not once again creating more silos? Because like Alicia was saying, it's too easy in the media, like, because the media just wants you to like, just give it to me in one line, where does it fit? Where do we categorize you? But I really hope that there's more like that melting pot mashup, and that's definitely like, I'm coming from mixed race heritage. And I'm also really interested in just like, there's, this is a really hot topic right now. And it needs to be, because nothing has been solved. But I'm also—
And that's an important point here. Nothing has been solved yet. Yes, we're sitting on a panel. Yes, like you said, we're 5 strong Black women, but nothing's been solved yet. The red carpet is not going to roll out in front of us tomorrow.
But what I'm interested in is like, let's take this to the next level. Let's create a new wave, And
what would be the next level for you?
I think it's like folks like Alicia would, like, imagine her as a white dude, all right? And
first of all, white men would not be having this conversation.
Yeah, well, there's that, but we'll leave that aside. Imagine she's a white dude, and she's like, "Whoa, this is up and coming director. He just wants some awards. Let's give him a bunch of really high budget films to just get his feet wet on. And then if she fails or if he fails, that's cool. Don't worry about it. Let's just do another one, And so I would love for there to be multiple opportunities for Black folks working in films, so that they're not being set up in this way that it's like, you better get it this time, because if not, you fail. then that's just proving to us you weren't ready, you know?
Sabine, do you
So there's
feel,
that, yeah.
I agree with you, Ella, and I'm going to go on that with Sabine. Do you feel there's no room for error when it comes to being Black in media? You almost can't make a mistake. You can't be with the wrong department. Like you just have to make sure you're on the straight and narrow all the time. Do you feel that way? Oh, Sabine, you're muted. There you go.
Yes, I think, you know what, when it comes when you're Black excellence is mandatory. You have to excel, because not only that you're opening the doors for others, but you're opening the door for yourself. Most likely, Ella, Jennifer, Alicia, and you and I started our own projects to have a portfolio. So creating a movie, I'm in television. When I started a web series, I needed it to look stellar, not to start like where I'm trying things out. You wanted it to speak for yourself, speak for the quality of your work, your experiences, and also telling your story. Where Black people, storytelling is part of our roots, our wings. And I think that is the key to success, by sharing our stories and making it universal. And that's what I use when I'm creating something, a project, a TV, a magazine, or a new show. That's how I approach it. How can a Black story become so universal and it contributes to that excellence? And that makes people tune in when they start forgetting about, about the color of our skin, because when you cut us up, we're all the same inside. But there's a reality. The pressure is enormous, and as a Black woman, it's even more, because funding is not coming. Today the Prime Minister announced 93
I saw that.
million.
Yeah.
93 million for Black entrepreneurs. One of the things that popped into my mind, I'm like, who's going to apply for those grants? Probably our counterparts. White counterparts are going to apply on our behalf, having some token Black people on their board applying for us.
So you're not seeing this
apply.
as a great thing yet. You're still not seeing that as something positive.
Well, it is positive, but I think the problem, unfortunately, look, TIFF is happening, your festival is happening, FIN is happening. I am Hot Docs. I am asked to mentor and be a part of panels at a level that is unsustainable for human life. I mean, and the reason, and not because I'm so fabulously glamorous or any of those things, or so articulate, it's mostly because there's like 10 people out there in this country who look like me that can have these conversations, because so few of us have been given the opportunities to rise and to have the knowledge and to be able to contribute. And it's the same thing, So what happens is they put out like this money, and that's amazing. It's a start. But the problem is, because the last, 50, 60, 70 years, they haven't been developing us. We haven't had the same access to the resources. So then it's like, so everything's a learning curve. Everything, you know what I mean, for so many people. So it's not to say that this money should not be put into our communities and those kinds of things, but, there has not been the kind of development that makes it a real smooth sliding in, and that's one of my pet peeves. And for me as a company, I got to tell you, we try our best to hire, but and to mentor and to talk to people and all these kinds of things. But so much of it is completely like, it's your free time. It's, you don't even, it's difficult for you to even maintain your own company, your own work, and sort of, and pay the bills and all these kinds of things. And so what actually happens is that you look around, I look around and I look at some of the executives, for example. There is maybe 3 or 4 in the entire country that are Black or brown even,
In the entire country. You didn't say in the company, you said in the entire country.
Yes. So, so these are some of the problems. But I mean, look.
So my question is, there's so many directions we can go. So let's try to keep it contained. You're saying something here that's really important, because there are people out there, there are students in journalism school, there are students in film school that are people of color. So how can they then come up and then know as well that the chances of them even making it are so slim? So why would someone also find interest to go into that field? Well, because you're going to think, okay, I'm not going to be seen anyways. I'm a minority. Not only am I a minority, I'm a Black woman at that. How much more work I have to do compared to everybody else? So do you think a lot of people just simply get turned off?
I think just because I was talking about it, I don't listen. This is not the time to give up. This is the time to jump in. So, for the first time in my lifetime, right, I am seeing people putting dollars behind the words.
Yes.
Okay. So to me, while it's painful, it's difficult. I think that why you should do it is because there is opportunities here that I've never seen before. And by the way, some of the opportunities are happening because Black people in the US, some of the top talent, they're saying we won't even do this work unless you change the system.
Yes.
So, you know what I'm saying? So
yes.
At the end of the day, maybe 5 years ago, I would have said, gee, man, you have to really think hard and fast if you want to do this. But right now, this is the time to do it.
Yeah, Sabin's dying to say something. Go ahead, Sabin.
The time is now. The time is now. We got to jump into that wave. We're trendy, but we know we got talent. We know we got stories to tell. We know that we got talent all around us. We all know a producer, a writer. Now we have to come together, come with production ideas and roll it out, because that's how we're going to get seen, telling our stories with our people, with our talents. I don't want to be segregated, but this is the time to show them what they've been putting us aside. And while we are training ourselves basically to be better at it. One of the things that you mentioned, how can we improve ourselves and making sure that, we find talents?
Yeah.
Well, mentorship, schools, journalism. We need to go into the schools and tell people there's role models. We're 5 people who made it in the industry in our own way, different path. They need to see models of success. I didn't see no model of success. I had to watch television in the States to be inspired.
You have to watch Shonda Rhimes and doing her thing to get some inspiration.
Exactly.
But listen, there's plenty of talent here, and we keep saying this, but would you guys say that today is a great day to be a Black woman in media? Are we being represented in a positive light finally? Would you guys agree to that, or not quite yet?
Well, I want to add one thing just about we think of media and we only think of mainstream and we only think of big budget, and you have to remember that you can thrive as a media artist and as a filmmaker, and you have to decide what success looks like for you. And then when you know what success looks like for you, then you go for that hard, right? Some people think they think Hollywood, they think big budget, that that's where their mind is. But as someone who's independent and on the peripheries and often doing things that are more arty, I really love what I get to do as well, and the people I get to work with. But simultaneously, it's about, like Sabine was saying, it's about the teams you create. And I think it's bringing in your people, but it's also finding those allies, because to really make it in this industry, you have to want to work with everyone. This is not media and film is not about going solo. I mean, you can do solo, but that's another thing. I think it is a wonderful time to be a Black woman, but it's only if you're in control of defining your future and what you want to achieve, because no one's really going to give it to you. But now if you're asking for it, they're going to give you time.
Okay. Alicia, I want to hear from you.
Yeah, I mean, I love what you said, Elle, about defining your own success because, and then going back to the question of like, why bother knowing how hard it is? Like, as somebody who is, I hate the word emerging, but you know,
Oh, it's
rising,
coming.
ascending
Yeah.
in this
I like
industry.
rising. I like
Um,
rising.
um, yeah, yeah, exactly. Thank you. But yeah, I personally feel like even though I know like how many Black women have directed a studio feature, how many Black women have like played Cannes Film Festival, and in my head, I'm like, wow, those numbers are really low over the past bajillions of years. Like that's not how I personally will define my success. And even though I've like just starting making films, like Black women love my films. So to
Mhm.
me, I'm like, check, success, like I've already done it. And I'm not going to define my own career based on like certain film festivals I didn't get into. And I kind of feel like it's a great time to be a Black woman because yes, people are considering me for jobs, and maybe that wouldn't have been happening as quickly as like now. There's been some more paving the way. People like, even I do production design on the side, all of a sudden now everybody wants to hire me as a designer after like the resurgence of like the Black Lives Matter movement, and I'm just like, where was everybody before? But that said, I still think it is a good time to be here as long as you are defining your own success and recognizing that like it's it's not as like finite as just getting like a Hollywood feature film or playing
Yeah.
a certain film festival. It's really just like, who is your work impacting? And for me, it can impact people whether I do those things or not. Obviously, I want to make a career doing this, but I will just go where the love is. And I'm going to try to get into all those worlds to make money at the same time as making my own work that I really love. But I think there's a lot of amazing people paving the way for me to actually get those studio jobs. And
Absolutely.
those 4 Black women that have done it, I'm like, I'm not like, oh no, no one can do it. I'm like, those 4 Black women prove that it can be done. So I think we just have to have that positive attitude looking at it,
Yeah.
because there's people out there doing it. And when I see like, you know, Jen, when I like first met Jennifer, I was like, oh my gosh, like I already know all the Black women doing it because I'm looking at them like they're doing it, so I can do it. And yeah.
And so I have to say, you mentioned Black Lives Matter. Do you think lately, especially for me, so I feel like I'm being asked to relive trauma or my traumas of what was it like for you as a Black woman like this? And tell me about your racism and tell me about this. Do you think sometimes you're being asked to relive your trauma and explain your humanity to others? And do you think that that should still be continuing on the path to having conversations, or we should focus on other things?
Well, that's an interesting question. So maybe you don't know this, but I spearheaded a group of Black folks for with this push to create this Black Screen Office. And so we've been in conversation with Minister Chabot around this. We also solicited the support of the Black community. Black producers and creators is what that is. And so you can imagine in doing that, we are talking to some of the gatekeepers, in fact, all the gatekeepers. And so you can imagine that there is a conversation where you are actually relating your story. You know, we talk about the fact that, let's say, as one of the 4 or 5 Black producers, creators who have produced feature films, written feature films in this country, it's been 10 years, 13 years between feature films. Clement, his last feature, 13 years ago. Charles, his last feature film, 12 years ago. Suds, his last feature film, 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So on and so on. So we have been telling these stories. We have been saying there is a problem when filmmakers, the distance between these things, when we get less budget, even though we've had festival successes, all these kinds of things, that the fact that so few young directors have been able to be scaffolded through this system. So it is literally a litany of storytelling. This is a part of what we've had to do. And, you know, there are times it gets really depressing.
Yeah.
Then I actually feel like if you have ministers in this country who didn't even understand that there was slavery in Canada, who don't believe that
Preach, Jennifer.
that don't believe we have the same policing problem in Canada. When Scott Wortley just came out with a study that said that Black Canadians are 20 times more likely to be shot by the police and engaged in violent interaction. 20 times more likely. So we have a country where people don't even understand this. So to me, it is actually, it's difficult, it's mind-numbing sometimes, but I actually feel like it's a privilege in many ways because I am able to tell these stories. I am able to influence and maybe make change. That is my interest. If I was just telling these stories and it was falling on deaf ears, where I felt like it was falling on deaf ears, I would stop. But right now, at this moment in time, it seems like this is actually having an impact. And so I have to stop, because ultimately what I want to see is a complete change through the systems. You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, if only a very stupid person would believe that being alone in some version of success is actually fulfilling. It is actually it's actually the lowest thing. You have no allies. You have no people to, you know, like you said, you're siloed. Everything is off to. So for me, all I want to do is see change in this country.
Good. Well, I think all of us want to see change. Not only do we want to see change, I mean, I feel like 2020 allowed us to see that there was an issue that we already knew existed, but I think a lot of other people are now opening their eyes to, okay, it's a problem and we need to address it, and it's way bigger than we thought it was. I think there's still quite a bit of ways to go, but we're definitely on the right track. And speaking of this, Alicia and Jennifer, you guys touched on this a little bit. We talked about, you know, not getting funding and that sort of thing. Many people say that in the media, you know, being overworked and underpaid is common, but would you say it's a fact and actually a standard for Black women?
Alicia, you first.
I would just say, like, I'll never know the jobs like I didn't get considered for because the person didn't believe I could do the job. You know, I'll only like have a feeling, like I'll never be in the room of like the conversations, but I will say I have seen.
Well, then have you ever seen someone doing exactly what you're doing, getting paid more? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I have seen 100%. You know, a white man have like less festival plays than me or whatever it is, less awards, less talent, and get bigger things than me faster. So I don't know if that, so yes, I will say that means to me, I think it took me longer to get like paid jobs. And I agree with what was said earlier, which is like, I don't feel like I can fail. I feel like I'm representing all Black women at all times in every room. And it kind of feels like, you know, I only have this one chance, or then people are going to think, and maybe this is more of an internal thing, but people will think Black women can't do it now because like I failed in some way. And I think like we should be allowed to fail and make like a million bad high budget movies, because we've seen those movies by other people and they get second chances. So yeah, I personally have experienced really bad burnout, even been in this space for not that long, because I feel like I just have to prove myself 15 times harder to get taken seriously. And even though I know I'm talented and people know, it kind of seems like there's other people getting those opportunities quicker.
So I know that the panel is focusing on you guys, so I'm just going to really quickly speak about my experience with this. And, you know, from working on a morning show to working in a newsroom right now, and just seeing opportunities, I've often seen people doing the exact same thing as me and getting much more of a paycheck than I was getting. And is it because I was a woman? Is it because of I was Black? Is it because of my lack of experience? and you'll never know, but it definitely plays with your mind and your thoughts. And you go home and you're like, okay, well, what is it that I'm missing? So I think that's more like, do you ever feel a little bit less than?
Well, I just to then follow up, I don't feel less than. What I feel is overburdened and overused and underappreciated. I do not feel less than. I'll tell you, I have, well, first of all, one of the stats we need to understand, and this is American because, of course, in Canada, we don't take, we don't have data, we don't take statistics, they don't collect it. But Black women make 62%, 62 cents on every dollar a white man makes for the exact same job. 62 cents. Mm-hmm. So that's number one. So what that actually means is that I have to work almost twice as long, twice as hard physically to actually get the same amount of money for the same job. Then you have to also look at the fact that you actually don't get the jobs as frequently. But I think for me, what it comes down to is, I made a film called Home Again. And I love this film, and it was a really difficult film to make. It wasn't difficult because the elements were challenging, which they were. They were massive, shooting in Trinidad, shooting in Jamaica, all of these kinds of things, massive elements. But I encountered a system that essentially said that if you want more money, make a Canadian film. Okay, so this film was not perceived as Canadian because it was about Jamaicans that were born in Canada, born in Europe, born in the US. I'm sorry, born abroad, or born in Jamaica, but lived abroad and then back to Jamaica. So it was not a Canadian film. And what that meant was that after 9 years of working on this project from start to finish, because it started off as a documentary with the National Film Board reached out to us and said, hey, what do you got? Which is an honor to begin with, and let's make a documentary film. And then they were like, oh, we really love this. Let's make this a narrative fiction. So it's documentary elements with dramatic story. And then we're like, yeah. But when we try to put the money together, my darling, at the end of 9 years, making this film that launched Stephen James as this wonderful actor he is, film with Larry Bent, all these wonderful people in it. I made $1,700. So you ask yourself,
Ella's smiling.
How many white males spend 9 years making a film and walk away with $1,700? And also when I said, I won't get a salary, I won't have any fee, I was told that a project I'd done 4 years earlier, I'd made lots of money on that. So essentially the assumption was it was okay for me to not make money here. So these are some of the things that have to change. So that's, and we have to stand up. And now that the system is actually recognizing some of these problems, it's a good thing, because what it means is some of the younger people that are coming up, they won't have to go through some of these stories.
Ella, do you have something to add to that?
Jennifer has been one of the mentors for Black Women Film. And when Black Women Film came to be 4 years ago, we had 40 of us in a room together. And we just sent that photo out with a press release and the launch. And it was really exciting for me because I was just meeting Jennifer for the first time, and there were some really excited people all in the room. And one of the things that came up was people went, 40? I didn't even know there was like 3. And the thing that excites me is that there's a lot more than 40. And as we come together and as we listen to each other, like I'm constantly learning every time Jennifer talks, and what you're all sharing. And it feels like it just genuinely feels refreshing. And it reminds me that, that we are not alone. And I think that's what racism does, is it actually makes you feel like you are alone, that you don't belong. And
you know what? I'm so sorry to interrupt, Ella, but you said something, I don't feel less than, when you said that, Jennifer. It resonated with me. Maybe that's a wrong choice of words. It just makes you feel alone. and you feel like you don't belong, like this is not where I'm meant to be, even though in your heart and your mind you think you should be there. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
And I think the thing to remember is like filmmaking is an art. Like as humans, we have the human right to express, to be creative, to make work, to pick up a camera, to walk into a space and be like, let's see what happens. But the reality is when more money is on the table, there's more risk, there's more, stress. But in the end, I mean, we have to remember that what we're fighting for is to actually do something that we love to do. And so it's so important not to get caught up too much in the societal burdens that are a real drag, and also like really create those spaces where you're feeling the sense of like Black joy and radical self-acceptance, and just like, yes, I need to make this, because if you're always feeling that weight, you won't make the thing, you won't believe in the thing. And so I find it exciting that there's more panels like this, as a reminder to anyone who's listening that like you matter, and if you are an ally and you're not part of the Black community, you also matter. I mean, the problem is when people think less of themselves, that those are the ones who are actually squashing others. There's like, now with the need for so much content, there's actually room for all our stories. And I do think it is up to a lot of the gatekeepers to just go, okay, let's check this out. Like let's make this space.
And Sabine, I'm going to ask you, we were talking about underpaid and overworked. Would you feel that way?
Yes, just because we need to know what we bring to the table and our value. We often underestimate our value. And I lived a situation recently where I got approached with a really amazing job. And I was so excited because I knew as a Black woman, most likely I wouldn't have that chance again. I was like, oh my God, I got to take it. And I didn't even ask what was the salary.
That's how badly you wanted it.
That's how badly I wanted it. And I know it was something, once in a lifetime. And when I asked the question, I felt kind of bad. And I was like, why is this? And when I got the amount, I was insulted.
Yeah.
Because I was paid like a junior. And I come with 15 years of experience, solid experience, excellence on top of that, and a notebook full of numbers that could benefit. And let's not forget that those people hiring us are riding the wave as well. So we could be used potentially as a token Black person, but I don't want to be used like that. I want to bring my community with me. And whether it's the French Black community or the English community. And I felt like, I was like, why did the person approach me? It's because they know that there's not a lot of people that will have access to that job. And I felt like, you know what? Let me negotiate with that person and see how far they're willing to have me. And the minute I start negotiating, they're like, that's not necessarily what we're looking for. We have a limited budget. I'm sure if it was a white person, they wouldn't have all that leverage. And that tells me there is education to be done among their community, how to negotiate, how to know our value in that industry. But because in that industry, it's quite competitive. It's even more difficult for a Black woman to have a place and to have a voice and to come, with negotiating skills.
Salaries and skills and
Yeah. So that was a wake-up call that we have a lot of work to do for the next generation that's coming up. And also we need to know our value, because we will be approached, ever since, the movement started. Well, people open up their eyes and they're like, I know a Black person. And
you gotta do a little bit more than just know a Black person, though.
Exactly. And I think we need to empower ourselves, know our value, and also know what we bring to the table. Because if they come in and reach out, it comes with a price, a knowledge, and a skill in a community. And that's what people need to understand. And I feel that as we come together after the death of George Floyd, this is only the beginning, and we need to push. We need to remember him because of his death and his murder, we are having all those doors open up for us.
We're having all these conversations. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
And I don't know how long it's going to last, but we need to write it and bring our community together. We know a lot of talented people. For me, this summer, I did a TV show in Ottawa, and I was producing it, and I hired half of the staff were ethnic. And I wanted to make sure there was representation. Being in that position of being a producer allows me to hire and fire who I want if they're not bringing their skills to the table. And we know a lot of talented people in our industry. Why are we not seeing them working more often?
Do you feel, and this goes to all of you, that I've sat in rooms and had discussions that turned into, almost fights where I was trying to explain, someone who wasn't a person of color, a white person, was saying, well, so basically we should just be giving you guys all the platforms and just free and just like, giving you guys, kind of like a free range to do what it is that you want to do. Do you understand what I mean? Shouldn't you guys earn it? Da, 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 da. So now a lot of people are saying they feel as though that the people are getting hired because they're Black and simply because they're Black. How do you feel about that?
I would love to answer this.
Hey.
I would love to answer this. Okay, so 4 years ago,
asking for a free ride.
Oh, please.
Yeah.
3 or 4 years ago, just like, let me roll my eyes, girlfriend.
Yeah.
3 or 4 years ago, CBC decided to take on a policy that gender was incredibly important. And what they did was they created a quota system. And the quota was that 50%, they wanted to have 50% of all of their content directed by women. Because at the time, the DGC, Directors Guild of Canada, had numbers that said 17% of the directors in Canada were women. No one bothered, by the way, to look at what percentage of those directors were not just Black women, Black people, brown people, Asian people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying, because if you actually looked at those numbers, I can tell you from empirical understanding of the community we're in, less than 1%. But anyhow, 50%. Within 3 years, last year at WIFTY celebration, 70% of the directors at CBC were women. 70%. Then you have to ask yourself, of that 70%, how many of them were Black women? So the point I'm trying to make, and to answer your question, is that we have had a quota system across Canada in the entertainment business related to directors for at least 3 to 4 years now. And many of the executives, the gatekeepers, the decision makers are women, and I'd say white women. So why should we feel in any way that we're being given a free ride when we were actually asking for the same kind of support? Because look, we are women too. We want that support. Support us in that same way. Put some dollars and numbers behind us. Okay? So I feel zero. I just shake I roll my eyes. I'm like, I do not care.
Like, don't bother. She's like, don't come with me with that.
Yeah, that's what I got to say about that.
What about you, Alicia?
I agree, obviously. I think that's just assuming that like we're not talented enough to be there, which is obviously not true. And I'm also annoyed with this gender parity thing because I've like shadowed on shows that I think like they kind of feel like they're accomplishing something by having me shadow like, and I'll be like the only Black person on the whole set, over all of the labor positions, like everything. The specific show I was on, there was one other Black person that worked on the entire show. And I mean, I didn't get hired to direct that show. I just got like this shadowing opportunity. And, you know, I've had like my agents say like, oh, there's a great opportunity, a potential opportunity we have for you. It's like this network show, and they want you to, they're looking for a Black female director in Toronto to shadow, in hopes to give them a job for the next season if it gets greenlit. And I'm just like, are white guys getting these types of offers? Because like, that's not a great offer for me. And I think like one problem that I have noticed about like people like realizing Black people are here and want work is that when, again, the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement, because it's been happening this whole time, happened, so many companies were coming up with like programs and like mentorships. And even though I've done mentorship programs and I think they're great, like I was also like, why don't you just hire us to do these jobs? Like there was this kind of big expose about commercial production companies. There was 0 Black women with commercial representation. And then I'm looking at all the commercial companies, like we're creating a mentorship for Black people. And I'm like, I know I could have commercial representation. Why don't you just do research and look to see who the Black women directors that like are out there that could do this job and like rep them? And I was a part of an apprenticeship opportunity where I got to shadow on those shows. And I think they sometimes feel like they've done their job just by participating in those things, but just hire us to do the job. Like just hire us to do the job. And I will not, if I get hired to do a job, I will again work 5 times as hard than anybody that's been there. So I know I will succeed in the position, but it's like just having somebody to believe in you to do the job in the same way that they're believing in other people is like what we need at this point, because we know we're talented.
I think another element of equity that people forget is that, yes, you have folks who totally know all the reins and they step in and they can just do the job. And then there's other folks that if you actually want to see more Black people on your sets, and that when you're trying to diversify, you bring them in, but you set them up for success. So it's not about shadowing, it's about like making sure that they're actually brought into the fold. You know, like as we know, the mentality of bringing a Black person you end up
to the table.
Yes, but there's that, but there's also like, how do we build relationships? So like, I think, you know, as anyone knows, when you're in producer mode, you just need to hire the person you need to get the thing done. But what I'm saying is it's putting work on people's shoulders, because it's actually like, you have to create a strategy. Like, how are you going to build relationship with folks so that you want them on your crew? And it's not about like racial profiling and tokenism and just bringing someone in here willy-nilly, but like, what can we do so that we're setting people up for success who are interested in working in the industry? You know, like, because what happens and like what inspired me to create Black Women Film is when I graduated from Ryerson, you know, my first foray into like television and film and just doing, you know, like the pay your dues stuff, I was just like, nah, I don't think this is for me, you know, because it wasn't the environment. So then I just went in a different angle and I started teaching people how to make films. And I was watching them doing really well. And I was like, hey, why didn't I think I could do this? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, oh, it's because of that first experience. You know, you can't just throw someone in and be like, well, sink or swim. You have to remember that you're inviting them into an environment where they have never, ever been welcome, you know, and like, if you're a smart person who believes in who you are, you're going to go, you know what, I'm going to find a place that I can do this without dealing with this.
Yeah.
Anyway, so, you know, that's my long-winded way of saying that, you know, when people go, well, aren't we just giving folks a free ride? There is no free ride to walk into a space where, you know, like you are still the only one representing the entire community of Black people. And it isn't fair to keep on creating spaces like that. Like, the strategy needs to go back to a lot of the people who have been in dominant positions to look at how do we shift that. And then I always throw it back to our own community, that like we have to check our own biases, like not to repeat the same models that we're trying to like break apart.
But you know the thing is, Ella, here's the thing. Mm-hmm. There are so few opportunities to hire. So for example, when we did our first series, mm-hmm. right? We did our first series. It was a vision series. Like, we had done a mini series, but we did our first series, and I think you've heard this story. It was like I was told I had to hire senior directors, right? Sud was going to direct a bunch. He created the show with me. He was going to direct 4 of them. And then I was told I had to hire these senior white directors, and they were all white male.
Right.
Mhm.
And so it was 13 episodes. And I said, well, gee whiz. Okay. So these guys are getting 2 cool vibes. And there was one episode, the 13th episode, or in that thing. And I said, here is this Black woman I want to hire. And the broadcaster said, no. And I said, think about it, because I didn't hire anybody for that 13th spot. And then what I also did was I provided an opportunity for that person to be met, like to shadow a couple of directors, and then they did the directing and is now one of like the top like female directors out there.
Yeah.
Awesome story. Okay. The thing is this, right? That environment, when I started out, that environment, I had no one. And what I discovered was that some people can grin and bear it and figure things out, right? And so it's always been important for me to try to create a real opportunity for at least one Black person in a significant way. That has been one of the keystone of how I decide what projects I do, how I try to do it, all these kinds of things, right? But what I am also aware of is that sometimes we come to the table because I have 3 kids, and what I know is that they're different. So one of my kids, I know for sure, can go into that environment and thrive. Like my one of my other kids, there is brilliant,
Yeah,
completely brilliant. Would not, like that environment would eat her alive, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say is that everybody is different. Everybody brings a different value. Not everybody is actually able to go into that space and sort of make it work, but some do and can, right? We actually acknowledge those kinds of things.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And then for me, what I try to do is, like I said, is try to create that opportunity as well. But you got to understand, man, like maybe again, it's possibly changing, but the amount of resistance because you are told you cannot do this.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is the broadcaster who said no, they're the ones who actually need to do the most work.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So you have a strategy, like you shared your strategy because you also need to show people that when you bring someone forward, they can do it because that's your name on the line, right? So it's like everyone needs a kind of strategy like the one you're speaking to that's manageable, but it's the broadcaster who immediately like kind of tied your hands on what that looks like, and you still need to deliver. So I'm kind of speaking to those broadcasters who know that they're still managing in that way, that it's like, how do you shift that? How do you actually like that? I don't have an answer here in this moment, but I'm just noticing like I had a great conversation with this investor who is the investor that gives directly to a broadcaster. And they said like, we want to lean on these broadcasters to only give them money to fund stuff made by Black women. So that's a start, but then do they stick with it when it's no longer a hot topic?
right. And sometimes that's what I'm afraid of. I'm just afraid that a lot of people are seeing Black Lives Matter or, Black people in media as a trending topic. Will it still be here 1 year from now? I'd love to have this conversation once again and see if we're exactly in the same place or if we've ascended, as Alicia said earlier. So listen, we don't have a lot of time. I'm just going to close it out here. But before we go, I want to hear from all of you. I guess for people watching, kids, people of color, people who are not of color, what would be your advice for perseverance and resilience and authenticity in this industry?
I'll go. So for me, like I keep a very detailed record of everybody who I see doing it because whenever I feel discouraged, I look at those people. So I already know all the Black women in Canada doing it. I already knew Ella, I already knew Jennifer, and I continue to follow what they're doing. And whenever I feel like I can't do it, I'm like, there's people doing it. But I also will collect, I have a folder on my desktop literally called Black Women in Film. And anytime I hear about like a Black woman in the States, in any country, like working at a high level, showrunners, like I find an article about like 20 Black female showrunners, I read the article and I screen capture every single person and I keep it in that folder, because I felt super isolated in film school and I maybe wouldn't have survived like years 1, 2, whatever, 3 out of it if I didn't recognize that there was other Black women, there was a Black community in film that I was a part of, because so many times I am in the room by myself. But this folder and the community of people that I have met at events and Caribbean Tales and like Toronto Black Film Festival and like the Black events that are happening, I'm like, oh right, we are here. Even when we're physically alone in this space, like spiritually, ancestrally, we're not alone in making this work. And that's like the most important thing for me. And that's why I have that folder, because I'm like, this is a reminder that I can do it because it's being done.
That's a great idea, Alicia. Keep that folder
along the way.
Wow. Sabin, what about you?
For me, before COVID, I would travel. I would go to the Essence Music Festival, Black Music Festival in the States, anywhere where I could find Black movie makers. That would keep me in tune with my main goal, to get more of our voices out, more of our stories, a strong narrative. And I have a group of sisterhood in the media business, whether it's in the French or English community. We get together once a month and we talk about the reality, the solution, and also what's going on in the industry to keep us going, because sometimes you do feel alone, like Alicia says so much. And having mentors, DAM, Diversité Artistique Montréal, is a great place to get mentorship and also support, because not only it's it's a very fun and interesting industry, but it's very demanding. And also being a woman, and if you have families or you're hoping to have a family, it could be daunting. So I find balance by going into organization like DAM, that has a group of sisterhood and also of experts that could help you to go through the lows and also highs of
I'm
this
going to jump in
industry.
really quickly, and then I'm going to disappear to put my little one to sleep. But I think one of the things someone once said is that, if you're a filmmaker, just keep on making work. Just like, don't, you just need to create and make and make and make and make, right. The idea comes up. It doesn't always have to be perfect, but if that seed wants to be, just go for it. See what happens, and then surround yourself by a couple people who push you. Because I think like we're talking about like gotta have a voice. Where's the platform? But you also just got to give yourself the time to actually create, and sometimes it's big, but sometimes it's just these small things that lead to some amazing stuff. So I'm just going to leave it at that. And if anyone wants to join Black Women from Canada, you can check us out.
Yes. So don't hang up because we're almost done. Jennifer, one last thing because Ella has to put her little one to sleep.
I get it. Actually,
mommy duties.
Yes. Interestingly enough, I think the thing that inspires me and keeps me going is my children. Actually, I feel like I came up at a time when it was so isolating, and so that's been a lot of my experiences. And so what I've tried to do is provide. I've tried to provide an environment where we can bring in and mentor and those kinds of things. But I got to tell you, when I get down, when it just seems so overwhelming, I look at these 3 girls and I know that they think I can do anything. And I also have an amazing partner, Sud Sutherland, an amazing director, all these kinds of things. But I look at them, they think I can do it. I'm like, fuck it, I am getting it done.
It's like, I'm doing it.
Sorry, I sore. But
It's
yeah,
fine.
that has been really some of the things. And then I think as I move forwards into the world, any project I do, I have a new project that I'm developing with Bell, with CTV. I'm really excited about it. It's a show that Suds and I are creating. It's a drama. And we had this wonderful conversation, and they are like, yeah, we asked for it, and they're giving us some money to bring a young writer in, it's a mentorship, but they're going to be paid to be in the room with Suds and myself as we're trying to create this show. So these are some of the little things, maybe they're little, maybe they're not, but these are some of the things that we're doing. And, I think a few years ago, we wouldn't have been able to ask for that and get that, but now we are. So now we can, so we are.
Good. Well, I'm glad. Well, listen, that was the end of our panel. I want to thank you, ladies. Ella left us, but the duties call, and I appreciate it. But not only was it important today to discuss Black stories, I think it's not just about Black stories, how they matter. I think also diversity matters, and it's very clear. I think that this right now, 2020, is the stepping stone that Black people needed, that people of color needed to push in through those doors. The glass ceiling seems like right here, right now. And I have to thank you guys for being so open about your lives, your businesses, your ventures, what you're doing and what you've done, Jennifer. And I appreciate everything so much. And it was an honor for me to even host this panel with you, beautiful ladies. So I thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
It's great to be
Ladies, and have a good night. Thank you guys so much.
Okay.
Thank you, Catherine. It was great.
Good night.
We hope you enjoyed this conversation. Check out the website at montrealblackfilm.com and grab your all-access pass to support these very films from the festival, a virtual edition online. So that means it's accessible to you too. Enjoy, and thank you for amplifying Black voices.